Medieval Europe was a vastly different world from the one we know today, where life moved at the rhythm of church bells and the changing seasons. In this era, roughly spanning from the 5th to the 15th centuries, society was structured around feudalism, a complex system that determined every aspect of daily existence. The common perception of medieval assassins, often romanticized in modern tales, bears little resemblance to the grim reality these individuals faced in their historical context. The medieval period was characterized by constant uncertainty and hardship. Most people lived as peasants, bound to the land they worked, never traveling more than a few miles from their birthplace. Cities were small, dirty, and overcrowded, with narrow streets that rarely saw sunlight due to overhanging upper stories of timber-framed buildings. The air was thick with smoke from countless fires, the smell of unwashed bodies, animal waste, and rotting food. Clean water was a luxury, and disease spread rapidly through communities that had no understanding of hygiene as we know it today. In this harsh environment, those who chose or were forced into the life of an assassin faced challenges that went far beyond the moral complexities of their profession. The very nature of medieval society made their existence precarious and filled with constant danger. Unlike the skilled, well-equipped figures of popular imagination, real medieval assassins were often desperate individuals driven by poverty, political persecution, or personal vendettas. They lacked the resources, training, and support systems that might make their dangerous profession even remotely sustainable. The legal system of medieval times showed no mercy to those caught in acts of murder or assassination. Justice was swift, brutal, and public. There were no appeals, no lengthy trials, and certainly no considerations for extenuating circumstances. The concept of rehabilitation was unknown. If an assassin was captured, their fate was sealed. The methods of execution were designed not just to end life, but to serve as a deterrent to others who might consider similar paths. Drawing and quartering, burning at the stake, hanging, and beheading were common methods, often carried out in public squares with entire communities gathered to witness the spectacle. Even if an assassin managed to complete their task and escape immediate capture, their troubles were far from over. Medieval Europe was a small world where news traveled slowly but surely. A successful assassination, particularly of someone important, would set in motion a chain of investigations and retributions that could span years or even decades. The victim's family, friends, and allies would not rest until justice was served. There was no statute of limitations on murder, no witness protection programs, and no way to disappear into anonymity in a world where everyone knew their neighbors and strangers were immediately suspect. The practical challenges of being a medieval assassin were immense. Weapons were crude by modern standards. A knife or dagger was the most common tool, but these required getting close to the target, which was extremely dangerous. Crossbows existed but were expensive, difficult to conceal, and required significant skill to use effectively. Poison was rare, expensive, and unreliable. Most assassins had to rely on surprise, stealth, and luck, all of which were difficult commodities to maintain in the close-knit communities of medieval times. The social structure of medieval society also worked against assassins. The feudal system created strong bonds of loyalty and protection around important figures. Lords were surrounded by knights, guards, and servants who were bound to them by oath and economic necessity. These weren't professional bodyguards in the modern sense, but they formed an effective protective network nonetheless. Anyone approaching a person of importance would be scrutinized, questioned, and watched. Assassins had to navigate not just the immediate security around their target, but the entire social fabric that surrounded them. Money was another significant problem. Medieval assassins rarely worked for the kind of substantial payments depicted in stories. Most were driven by personal motives rather than professional ones, meaning they had to fund their own activities while trying to make a living in other ways. This often meant they were poorly equipped, inadequately prepared, and operating under severe financial constraints. The few who did work for payment often found that their employers were unreliable, might not pay as promised, or could even turn them in to authorities to eliminate witnesses. Training was another area where reality differed dramatically from fiction. There were no schools for assassins, no ancient traditions passed down through generations, and no mystical techniques. Most medieval assassins learned their skills through trial and error, military service, or criminal activities. This meant they were often unprepared for the psychological and practical challenges of their chosen profession. The act of taking a life, even for those hardened by medieval life's brutalities, was traumatic and disorienting. The religious context of medieval Europe added another layer of complexity to the assassin's plight. The Catholic Church held enormous power and influence over every aspect of life. Murder was considered one of the gravest sins, and the concept of eternal damnation was very real to medieval minds. An assassin not only faced earthly justice but also believed they were condemning their soul to hell. This psychological burden was enormous in a time when religious belief was not optional but central to one's identity and worldview. As we settle into this contemplation of medieval hardships, imagine yourself as an observer in this distant time, watching from a safe distance as these challenging realities unfold. The weight of these historical truths, so different from our modern world, begins to create a sense of gratitude for the safety and certainty we often take for granted. The very hardships of this ancient time become a kind of lullaby, reminding us of how far humanity has traveled from those dark and difficult days. The chamber we are about to enter has been carefully prepared for our evening of reflection and contemplation. As the monk gently pushes open a smaller, more intimate door, we are welcomed into a space that immediately evokes a sense of peace and safety. This room, carved directly from the living rock of the hillside, represents centuries of thoughtful design intended to create the perfect environment for deep meditation on life's more challenging truths. The chamber is circular, with walls that curve gently around us like a protective embrace. The stone surfaces have been smoothed and polished over the centuries, not by tools but by the countless hands that have touched them in prayer and contemplation. The rock itself is a warm, honey-colored limestone that seems to glow softly in the candlelight, creating an atmosphere that is both mysterious and comforting. Small niches carved into the walls hold simple beeswax candles, their flames dancing gently in the still air and casting moving shadows that seem to bring the ancient stones to life. The floor of the chamber is covered with thick, hand-woven rugs that have been created by generations of monastery craftsmen. These textiles, dyed with natural colors from local plants and minerals, display subtle patterns that seem to draw the eye inward toward the center of the room. The rugs are soft beneath our feet, providing both physical comfort and acoustic dampening that enhances the profound quiet of the space. Walking across them feels like moving through centuries of accumulated peace and wisdom. In the center of the chamber sits a low, circular stone platform, raised just slightly above the floor level. This platform, worn smooth by age and use, is surrounded by comfortable cushions covered in simple, natural fabrics. The arrangement invites contemplation and rest, providing a place where one can sit comfortably for extended periods while considering the deeper questions of existence. The platform itself seems to anchor the room, creating a focal point that naturally draws attention and encourages a settling of the mind. Above us, the ceiling rises to form a gentle dome that enhances the acoustics of the chamber. Any sound made here seems to be absorbed and transformed, creating an effect where even whispers take on a quality of reverence and importance. The dome has been painted with a simple but beautiful star pattern, using pigments that have retained their deep blue and gold colors despite centuries of age. Looking up at these painted stars creates a sense of connection to the infinite that transcends the physical boundaries of the room. Small windows, positioned high in the walls and designed more for ventilation than illumination, allow the evening air to circulate gently through the chamber. The breeze that enters is soft and constant, carrying with it the sense of the monastery garden and the distant countryside. This natural ventilation system ensures that the air remains fresh and comfortable, preventing the stuffiness that might otherwise accumulate in such an enclosed space. The monk who has guided us here explains in hushed tones that this chamber has been used for centuries by those seeking to understand the more difficult aspects of human history and nature. Scholars, theologians, and thoughtful individuals have come here to wrestle with questions about violence, justice, mercy, and the complex moral realities of different historical periods. The room has witnessed countless hours of deep contemplation and has absorbed something of the peace and understanding that such reflection can bring. As we settle onto the comfortable cushions arranged around the central platform, we notice how the chamber seems to encourage a natural slowing down of both body and mind. The gentle curve of the walls, the soft lighting, and the profound quiet all work together to create an environment where the frantic pace of ordinary life simply cannot exist. Time seems to move differently here, flowing more slowly and deliberately, allowing for the kind of deep consideration that our subject requires. The temperature in the chamber is perfectly comfortable, maintained by the thermal mass of the thick stone walls that absorb heat during the day and release it slowly throughout the night. This natural climate control system ensures that we can focus entirely on our contemplation without any physical discomfort or distraction. The stones themselves seem to radiate a gentle warmth that is both physical and metaphorical, suggesting the comfort that comes from being surrounded by centuries of peaceful meditation. Arranged around the chamber are several simple wooden lecterns that hold ancient texts and manuscripts related to medieval history and moral philosophy. These books, bound in leather and written on parchment, represent centuries of human thought about the kinds of questions we are here to consider. The very presence of these texts reminds us that we are part of a long tradition of individuals seeking to understand the complexities of human nature and historical truth. The lighting in the chamber comes entirely from candles, creating a warm, flickering illumination that seems to encourage introspection and calm. The flames dance gently in the still air, creating ever-changing patterns of light and shadow on the stone walls. This natural, organic lighting helps to disconnect us from the artificial rhythms of modern life and connect us instead to the slower, more natural patterns that govern medieval existence. As we take our places on the comfortable cushions, we begin to feel the special qualities of this space working their subtle magic on our minds and bodies. The combination of thoughtful design, natural materials, and centuries of peaceful use has created an environment that naturally encourages the kind of deep, sustained contemplation that our subject requires. The chamber seems to embrace us gently, providing both physical comfort and psychological safety as we prepare to explore the difficult realities of medieval life. The silence here is not empty but full of potential, like a blank page waiting to be written upon or a calm lake ready to reflect the sky. It invites us to let go of the surface concerns and distractions that normally occupy our minds and to sink instead into the deeper currents of thought and understanding. In this protected space, surrounded by centuries of accumulated wisdom and peace, we can safely examine even the darkest aspects of human history with equanimity and compassion. Having found our comfortable positions within this ancient chamber of contemplation, we begin to settle more deeply into our exploration of medieval life and its particular challenges. The weight of our bodies against the soft cushions mirrors the way our minds begin to settle into the rhythm of sustained reflection. Here, surrounded by centuries of accumulated wisdom and peace, we can examine the harsh realities of historical existence with both honesty and compassion. The life of a medieval assassin, which might seem dramatic or exciting in stories, reveals itself upon closer examination to be a path filled with extraordinary hardship and isolation. These individuals existed at the very margins of an already difficult society, cut off from the normal sources of comfort, community, and meaning that made medieval life bearable for most people. Understanding their plight helps us appreciate the profound importance of belonging, stability, and moral clarity in human existence. Consider the simple matter of daily survival for someone operating outside the law in medieval times. Most people in this era lived within tight-knit communities where everyone knew everyone else, where strangers were immediately noticed and questioned, and where survival depended on cooperation and mutual support. An assassin, by the very nature of their profession, had to live outside these protective networks. They could not put down roots, could not build lasting relationships, and could not rely on the community support systems that made life possible for ordinary people. The basic necessities of life, food, shelter, clothing, and safety, became enormous challenges for anyone living on the margins of medieval society. Food was often scarce even for law-abiding citizens who had established places in their communities. For someone who had to remain hidden or mobile, securing adequate nutrition became a constant struggle. They could not maintain gardens, could not participate in harvest celebrations, and could not rely on the charity and reciprocal support that helped communities survive difficult times. Shelter presented similar challenges. Most medieval homes were simple structures that required community effort to build and maintain. Families, neighbors, and guild members worked together to construct dwellings, sharing resources, skills, and labor. An assassin, cut off from these social networks, had to find shelter in abandoned buildings, caves, forests, or other marginal spaces that offered little comfort or security. The constant need to remain mobile meant they could never create the kind of stable, comfortable living space that most people considered essential for human dignity. The psychological toll of such isolation was immense. Medieval people lived their entire lives embedded in complex social relationships that provided identity, meaning, and emotional support. They knew their place in the world through their relationships to family, community, church, and feudal hierarchy. An assassin, by choosing or being forced into their profession, lost access to all of these stabilizing relationships. They became, in effect, socially dead long before their physical death, cut off from the human connections that made life meaningful. Even the basic human need for companionship became complicated for medieval assassins. They could not afford to trust others, could not share their true identity or circumstances, and could not form the deep, lasting friendships that provided emotional sustenance for most people. Any relationship they did form carried the risk of betrayal, discovery, or endangering others. This enforced isolation created a kind of psychological suffering that was perhaps even worse than the physical hardships they endured. The absence of medical care was another significant hardship. Medieval medicine was primitive by modern standards, but even these limited healing resources were typically available only to those who belonged to communities. Local healers, monks with medical knowledge, and even folk remedies passed down through families were all part of social networks that assassins could not access. Injuries, illnesses, and the general wear and tear of a hard life had to be endured without the comfort of skilled care or even basic sympathy. Religious life, which provided structure, meaning, and comfort to virtually everyone in medieval Europe, was also largely closed to those living outside the law. The rhythm of religious observances marked the passage of time and seasons for ordinary people, providing a framework for understanding their place in the cosmic order. Church services, religious festivals, and the cycle of religious seasons created a sense of belonging to something larger than oneself. Assassins, cut off from these spiritual resources, faced not only physical and social isolation but spiritual emptiness as well. The very skills required for their profession created additional psychological burdens. The act of taking human life, even in a society where violence was more common than today, carried enormous moral and emotional weight. Medieval people had complex but deeply held beliefs about the sanctity of life, the reality of sin, and the consequences of moral transgression. An assassin had to live with the knowledge that they had violated fundamental moral principles, often repeatedly, and this knowledge created a burden of guilt and spiritual anguish that could become overwhelming. The financial aspects of an assassin's life were also far more complicated and difficult than popular imagination suggests. Medieval economies were largely based on agriculture, local trade, and feudal obligations rather than cash transactions. Most people acquired what they needed through their place in the feudal system, through guild memberships, or through family and community networks. An assassin, existing outside these systems, had to find ways to convert their illegal services into the basic necessities of life, often dealing with unreliable or dangerous clients who might not pay as promised or who might betray them to authorities. As we contemplate these historical realities from our comfortable position in this peaceful chamber, we begin to understand how the very hardships that made medieval life difficult for everyone became exponentially worse for those who found themselves outside the protective structures of society. The warmth of the candlelight around us, the comfort of our cushions, and the safety of these ancient walls provide a stark contrast to the cold, uncertain existence of those historical figures we are considering. The stone walls that surround us have witnessed centuries of such contemplations, absorbing the thoughts and prayers of countless individuals who have sought to understand the complexities of human existence. Their solid presence reminds us that while historical hardships were real and profound, they are also past, separated from us by centuries of human progress and the accumulated wisdom of generations who learned from these difficult experiences. As we continue our contemplation within this peaceful sanctuary, our understanding of medieval hardships deepens and expands, like ripples spreading across the surface of a still pond. The candlelight around us flickers gently, creating an atmosphere that encourages ever deeper reflection on the complex realities of historical existence. Here, safe within these ancient walls, we can examine the most challenging aspects of the past with both intellectual honesty and emotional equanimity. The legal system that governed medieval Europe adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of why the life of an assassin was so particularly difficult. Justice in medieval times was swift, public, and brutal, designed more to deter future crimes than to rehabilitate offenders. The concept of proportional punishment, which forms the basis of modern legal systems, was largely unknown. Instead, medieval justice operated on principles of retribution and social control that made survival extremely difficult for anyone who stepped outside the law. When an assassin was captured, which was often inevitable given the close-knit nature of medieval communities, they faced a legal system that offered no protection, no appeals process, and no consideration of mitigating circumstances. The trial, if it could be called that, was typically brief and focused on establishing guilt rather than understanding the complex factors that might have led to the crime. Witnesses were few, evidence was circumstantial, and the accused had no right to legal representation or even to speak in their own defense. The methods of execution used in medieval times were deliberately designed to be as horrific as possible, serving as public spectacles that would deter others from similar crimes. Drawing and quartering, one of the most feared punishments, involved tying the condemned person to 4 horses and having them pulled in different directions until the body was literally torn apart. This gruesome procedure was often preceded by hanging until nearly dead, disemboweling while still alive, and beheading. The entire process could take hours and was carried out in front of large crowds who were expected to witness the consequences of defying social order. Burning at the stake was another common form of execution, particularly for crimes that were considered to threaten the spiritual order of society. The condemned person was tied to a wooden post surrounded by bundles of wood and straw that were then set ablaze. Death could be relatively quick if the flames reached the vital organs rapidly, but often the process was prolonged and agonizing. Sometimes, as an act of mercy, the executioner would strangle the victim before the flames could cause too much suffering, but this mercy was not guaranteed and depended on factors beyond the condemned person's control. Even simpler forms of execution, such as hanging or beheading, were carried out in public squares with entire communities gathering to witness the event. These public executions served multiple purposes beyond simply ending the life of the criminal. They reinforced social hierarchies, demonstrated the power of authorities, provided a form of entertainment in societies where such diversions were rare, and created collective participation in the maintenance of social order. The psychological impact of living under such a legal system was profound for everyone, but particularly devastating for those who had already stepped outside the law. The knowledge that capture meant certain death in the most horrible possible manner created a constant state of anxiety and fear that made normal psychological functioning extremely difficult. Sleep became elusive, relationships became impossible, and even simple pleasures were tainted by the constant awareness of potential consequences. The absence of any possibility of redemption or rehabilitation made the psychological burden even heavier. In modern legal systems, even those who commit serious crimes retain some hope of eventual release, rehabilitation, or at least a fair hearing. Medieval assassins had no such hope. Once they had chosen or been forced into their profession, they had essentially chosen a path that could only end in violent death. This certainty created a kind of living death that preceded their actual execution by months or years. The social networks that typically provided support and meaning in medieval life also worked against assassins in ways that compounded their isolation and danger. Medieval communities were bound together by complex webs of obligation, loyalty, and mutual dependence that created powerful incentives for cooperation and conformity. When a crime occurred, particularly a serious crime like assassination, these same networks mobilized to identify and capture the perpetrator. Family members, friends, neighbors, and even casual acquaintances all had strong incentives to cooperate with authorities in hunting down criminals. The safety and stability of the entire community depended on maintaining order, and anyone who harbored or assisted a criminal put themselves and their loved ones at risk. This meant that assassins could not rely on the normal sources of help and support that other people took for granted. Even those who might have been sympathetic to their plight could not afford to offer assistance. The economic incentives also worked against criminals in medieval society. Rewards were often offered for information leading to the capture of serious criminals, and these rewards could represent significant wealth for people living at subsistence levels. The promise of money, land, or other valuable consideration created powerful motivations for betrayal, even among those who might otherwise have been friendly or neutral toward the fugitive. The religious beliefs that provided comfort and meaning to most medieval people also became sources of additional torment for assassins. The Catholic Church taught that murder was one of the most serious sins, and that those who died in a state of unrepentant sin faced eternal damnation. For people who genuinely believed in the reality of heaven and hell, this created psychological anguish that went far beyond the fear of earthly punishment. They faced not only the prospect of painful death but also the certainty of eternal suffering. The sacramental system that provided spiritual comfort to ordinary people was also largely closed to those living outside the law. Confession, communion, and other religious practices required integration into church communities, which was impossible for fugitives who had to remain hidden and mobile. This spiritual isolation compounded the social and psychological isolation that was already making their lives unbearable. As we sit in quiet contemplation of these historical realities, surrounded by the peace and safety of our ancient sanctuary, we begin to understand how the very structures that made civilization possible in medieval times also created conditions of extraordinary hardship for those who found themselves outside those structures. The warmth of the candlelight, the comfort of our cushions, and the protective embrace of these ancient stone walls remind us of the importance of safety, community, and belonging in human life. The gentle sound of evening prayers drifting through the stone corridors reminds us that we are part of a continuous tradition of humans seeking for understanding and meaning. The monks whose voices we hear have dedicated their lives to contemplating the complexities of existence, including the difficult questions we are exploring tonight. Their presence, even at a distance, provides a sense of companionship in our reflections. The depth of our meditation continues to expand, like diving slowly into the depths of a clear mountain lake where each level reveals new aspects of the underwater landscape. Here in our sanctuary, surrounded by the gentle glow of candlelight and the protective embrace of ancient stones, we can safely explore the most profound aspects of medieval existence without being overwhelmed by their intensity. The technological limitations of medieval times created additional layers of difficulty for anyone attempting to live as an assassin. The weapons available to ordinary people were crude and unreliable by modern standards, requiring great physical strength, considerable skill, and often involving significant personal risk to use effectively. A knife or dagger, the most common tool available to potential assassins, required the attacker to get close enough to their victim to use it, which dramatically increased the chances of being identified, captured, or killed in the attempt. The making of weapons was a specialized craft that required access to materials, tools, and knowledge that were not readily available to those living outside normal social structures. Iron and steel were expensive and carefully controlled commodities in medieval society. The process of forging a blade required not only raw materials but also access to forges, anvils, hammers, and other specialized equipment that was typically owned by guild members or feudal lords. An assassin could not simply walk into a shop and purchase a weapon, nor could they easily acquire the materials and knowledge needed to make their own. Even if a weapon could be obtained, maintaining it in good condition required ongoing access to resources and skills that were difficult for a fugitive to acquire. Metal blades rust and dull quickly without proper care, leather wrappings decay, and wooden handles crack and splinter. The constant maintenance required to keep weapons functional was just one more challenge in a life already filled with overwhelming difficulties. Crossbows represented a more sophisticated technology that could potentially allow an assassin to strike from a distance, but these weapons came with their own set of problems. They were expensive, complex mechanisms that required specialized knowledge to use effectively. The crossbow bolts themselves had to be carefully crafted to fly accurately, and the powerful springs and mechanisms of the weapon required regular maintenance by skilled craftsmen. Most importantly, crossbows were slow to reload, meaning that an assassin typically had only one chance to complete their task before becoming vulnerable to retaliation. The use of poison, often portrayed as a favorite tool of medieval assassins in popular fiction, was actually extremely difficult and unreliable in practice. The knowledge of toxic substances was limited and often inaccurate, based on folklore and superstition rather than scientific understanding. Many substances that were believed to be poisonous were actually harmless, while others that seemed safe could be deadly in unexpected ways. Even when effective poisons could be identified, obtaining them required access to exotic plants, minerals, or animal products that were rare and expensive. The administration of poison also presented enormous challenges. Medieval people were generally suspicious of unfamiliar foods and drinks, particularly when offered by strangers or in unusual circumstances. The strong flavors and rough textures of medieval food could help mask the taste of some poisons, but they could also make it more difficult to ensure that a victim consumed a lethal dose. Many attempted poisonings failed because the victim detected something wrong with their food or drink and stopped consuming it before ingesting enough to cause death. The knowledge required to use poison effectively was complex and specialized, involving understanding of dosages, timing, symptoms, and methods of administration that were not widely known. This knowledge was typically possessed only by physicians, apothecaries, or scholars who had access to written texts and formal education. These were exactly the kinds of people who were least likely to be involved in assassination plots and most likely to be suspicious of anyone seeking such information. The social customs and eating habits of medieval times also worked against would-be poisoners. Important people rarely ate alone and rarely consumed food that had not been prepared by trusted servants under careful supervision. The practice of having food tasters, while not universal, was common enough among the wealthy and powerful to create an additional barrier to successful poisoning. Even the simple custom of sharing meals from common dishes made it difficult to target a specific individual without endangering innocent people. The aftermath of a successful assassination created problems that extended far beyond the immediate act of violence. Medieval society was organized around personal relationships and feudal obligations that created powerful incentives for revenge and retaliation. When an important person was killed, their death set in motion a complex web of responses that could involve families, allies, and entire communities in seeking justice or vengeance. This was not a matter of simple law enforcement but of personal honor and social obligation that could persist for generations. The family and followers of an assassination victim had both moral and practical reasons to pursue the killer. Honor demanded that the death be avenged, and practical considerations required that such actions be deterred to prevent further attacks. The pursuit of assassins was not limited to official authorities but involved networks of relatives, friends, and allies who had their own resources and motivations for bringing killers to justice. The feudal system also meant that the death of a lord or other important figure created power vacuums that needed to be filled quickly to prevent chaos and conflict. These succession struggles often involved multiple claimants who might blame their rivals for the assassination, leading to complex political conflicts that could escalate into open warfare. An assassin who thought their task was complete after killing their target might find themselves at the center of much larger conflicts that made their survival even more unlikely. The investigation methods available to medieval authorities, while primitive by modern standards, were often effective within the limited scope of medieval communities. The close-knit nature of these societies meant that unusual behavior, unfamiliar faces, or suspicious activities were quickly noticed and reported. Witnesses were plentiful, and the limited number of possible escape routes made tracking fugitives relatively straightforward for those who knew the local terrain and customs. The interrogation techniques used by medieval investigators were brutal and often effective at extracting information from suspects and witnesses. Torture was considered a legitimate tool for discovering truth, and the methods used were designed to cause maximum pain and psychological pressure. Even innocent people often provided information or confessions under such treatment, and guilty parties had little hope of maintaining their silence when subjected to such techniques. As we continue our contemplation in this peaceful sanctuary, the contrast between the harsh realities we are exploring and the safety and comfort of our present circumstances becomes ever more apparent. The gentle warmth of the candlelight, the soft comfort of our cushions, and the protective solidity of the ancient stone walls remind us that these historical hardships are past and that we can examine them from a position of safety and security. The sound of our own breathing, slow and regular in the quiet air of the chamber, connects us to the basic rhythms of life that have remained constant throughout human history. While the external circumstances of life have changed dramatically, the fundamental human needs for safety, comfort, and understanding remain the same, and we are fortunate to be able to satisfy these needs as we explore the experiences of those who lived in more difficult times. In this deepest phase of our contemplation, we find ourselves entering a state of profound understanding that transcends the mere accumulation of historical facts. Like a meditation master who has moved beyond the surface fluctuations of the mind to touch something eternal and unchanging, we begin to perceive the universal human experiences that connect us across the centuries to those who lived in such different circumstances. The chamber around us seems to pulse gently with the accumulated wisdom of ages, the stone walls breathing slowly with the rhythm of deep contemplation. The candlelight has settled into a steady, golden glow that illuminates not just the physical space but also the inner landscape of understanding we are exploring. Here, in this timeless sanctuary, we can hold the suffering of the past with compassion while remaining anchored in the peace and safety of the present moment. From this elevated perspective of understanding, we begin to see that the hardships faced by medieval assassins were not merely individual tragedies but reflections of larger truths about human nature and social organization. Their extreme isolation and suffering illuminate by contrast the fundamental importance of community, belonging, and moral clarity in human life. Their stories become teachers, showing us what happens when these essential elements are removed from human existence. The very extremity of their circumstances helps us understand how precious are the simple things we often take for granted: the ability to sleep safely through the night, to trust in the good intentions of others, to participate in community celebrations, to seek help when we are sick or troubled, to feel that our lives have meaning and purpose beyond mere survival. These medieval figures, trapped in lives of desperate isolation, remind us that these seemingly simple things are actually the foundations upon which human happiness and fulfillment are built. Their enforced separation from religious life and spiritual community reveals the deep human need for connection to something larger than oneself. Medieval people found meaning and purpose through their relationship to God, to their community, and to the great cosmic order that they believed governed all existence. When assassins were cut off from these sources of meaning, they experienced a kind of spiritual death that was perhaps even more terrible than their eventual physical death. This teaches us about the importance of purpose, meaning, and spiritual connection in our own lives. The brutal justice system that awaited captured assassins, while horrifying by modern standards, reveals important truths about the role of law and social order in human communities. The very harshness of medieval punishments reflected the fragility of social order in times when communities lived constantly on the edge of chaos and violence. Understanding this helps us appreciate the more nuanced and humane systems of justice that have evolved over centuries of human moral and intellectual development. The technological and material limitations that made the assassin's life so difficult also illuminate the remarkable achievements of human civilization in overcoming these constraints. The simple tools and weapons available to medieval people required great skill, strength, and courage to use effectively. The unreliable nature of these technologies meant that success in any endeavor required not just planning and preparation but also acceptance of uncertainty and risk that we can barely imagine today. This technological primitiveness extended to every aspect of life, from medical care to transportation to communication. A minor injury that would be easily treated today could become life-threatening in medieval times. A journey that we might complete in hours required days or weeks of dangerous travel. News that we receive instantly traveled slowly and often inaccurately through networks of human messengers. Understanding these limitations helps us appreciate the remarkable progress that humanity has made in reducing suffering and increasing human capability. The economic systems that made survival so difficult for those outside normal social structures also reveal important truths about the nature of human cooperation and mutual dependence. Medieval communities survived through complex networks of reciprocal obligation and shared responsibility that bound individuals together in relationships of mutual support. Those who stepped outside these networks lost access not just to material resources but to the entire web of relationships that made civilized life possible. This economic interdependence was not just a matter of practical necessity but also of social and psychological well-being. People knew who they were through their relationships to others, through their roles in family, guild, and community. When assassins lost these connections, they lost not just their livelihood but their identity and sense of purpose. This teaches us about the fundamental importance of belonging and social connection in human life. The psychological torment experienced by medieval assassins, cut off from all normal sources of support and meaning, reveals by contrast the psychological resources that are available to us today. We have access to knowledge about mental health, to therapeutic techniques, to medications, and to social support systems that can help us cope with even severe psychological distress. We understand that human psychology is complex and that people can change, grow, and heal in ways that were unimaginable to medieval minds. The spiritual anguish experienced by those who believed they had damned their souls through their actions reveals the power of belief systems to create both suffering and comfort. While we might not share the specific religious beliefs of medieval people, we can understand the human need for moral clarity, for forgiveness, and for the possibility of redemption. The torment of those who believed they were beyond salvation teaches us about the importance of hope and the possibility of transformation in human life. As we rest in this profound understanding, the physical sensations of our comfortable position in this peaceful chamber remind us of the miraculous progress that humanity has made since medieval times. The soft cushions beneath us represent centuries of advancement in textile production and manufacturing. The steady warmth of the room reflects sophisticated understanding of architecture and engineering. The clean air we breathe and the pure water we drink represent public health achievements that have eliminated many of the diseases and conditions that made medieval life so precarious. The very fact that we can sit here safely contemplating these historical realities, protected from weather, violence, disease, and want, represents an almost miraculous transformation of human circumstances. We are surrounded by technologies, institutions, and knowledge that would have seemed like magic to medieval people. Our longest day is safer and more comfortable than their most peaceful moments. This recognition fills us with a deep sense of gratitude that extends beyond our personal circumstances to encompass the entire human journey. We are the beneficiaries of countless generations of human struggle, creativity, and moral development. Every comfort we enjoy, every freedom we exercise, every opportunity we have for growth and fulfillment has been purchased by the efforts and sacrifices of those who came before us. The contemplation of medieval hardships thus becomes not just an intellectual exercise but a practice of gratitude and appreciation that connects us to the larger human story. We begin to understand our place in the great chain of human development, and this understanding brings with it both humility and responsibility. We are called to honor the struggles of the past by using our advantages wisely and by contributing to the continued progress of human civilization. As our contemplation begins its gentle transition toward rest and sleep, the atmosphere in our ancient sanctuary shifts subtly, like the soft change from evening to night. The candles around us seem to burn with an even steadier flame, their light becoming warmer and more golden, creating an environment that naturally encourages the relaxation of both body and mind. The stone walls that have held so much wisdom and contemplation continue to embrace us, but now their presence becomes more like a gentle lullaby than an invitation to deep thought. The profound understanding we have gained through our exploration of medieval hardships has created within us a deep sense of appreciation for the peace and safety of our present moment. This appreciation settles into our consciousness like warm honey, sweet and comforting, filling the spaces where tension and worry might otherwise reside. We find ourselves naturally releasing the effort of sustained contemplation, allowing our minds to begin the gentle drift toward the restorative state of sleep. The physical sensations of our comfortable position become more prominent as our intellectual focus softens. The cushions beneath us seem to cradle our bodies with increasing tenderness, molding themselves to our form and providing exactly the support we need. The soft fabrics against our skin feel luxurious and comforting, a tangible reminder of the human capacity for creating beauty and comfort even in the simplest things. Each breath we take fills us with clean, warm air that carries the subtle sense of beeswax, old wood, and the distant gardens. Our exploration of the difficulties faced by medieval assassins has created a profound contrast that makes our present safety feel even more precious and remarkable. The warmth of our sanctuary, the softness of our resting place, and the complete absence of any threat or danger feel like gifts beyond measure. We understand now, in a visceral way, how precious these simple comforts are and how much human effort and progress have been required to create the conditions where such peace is possible. The steady rhythm of our breathing begins to match the timeless rhythm of the sanctuary itself, as if we are becoming part of the ancient peace that has accumulated here over centuries. Each exhalation releases a little more of the day's tensions and concerns, while each inhalation brings us deeper into the present moment of safety and comfort. The air itself seems to carry the accumulated tranquility of all the contemplative souls who have found rest in this sacred space. The knowledge we have gained about historical hardships, rather than disturbing our peace, actually enhances it by helping us understand how remarkable our current circumstances truly are. We can rest tonight without fear of persecution, without worry about where our next meal will come from, without concern for immediate physical safety. These freedoms, which seemed ordinary at the beginning of our evening, now reveal themselves as extraordinary gifts that connect us to the best achievements of human civilization. The candlelight continues to flicker gently, but its movement becomes more hypnotic and soothing, like watching flames in a fireplace on a cold winter evening. The dancing shadows on the stone walls take on the quality of a gentle visual meditation, drawing our eyes into soft focus and encouraging a natural relaxation of the mind. The ancient stones themselves seem to radiate centuries of accumulated peace, as if all the prayers, meditations, and quiet contemplations that have taken place here have somehow been absorbed into the very fabric of the building. Our body begins to feel heavier and more relaxed as we allow ourselves to settle more completely into our comfortable position. The weight of our limbs against the soft cushions becomes pleasant and comforting rather than something we need to adjust or change. Our muscles, which may have held tension from the day's activities, begin to release and soften, starting with the large muscle groups and gradually extending to the smaller, more subtle areas of tightness we may not have even noticed. The sounds of the monastery around us have settled into the gentle rhythm of evening prayers and contemplative quiet. Occasionally, we might hear the soft footsteps of a monk walking slowly through the corridors, or the distant sound of a door closing gently, but these sounds only add to our sense of being safely held within a community dedicated to peace and spiritual reflection. The overall silence is not empty but full of presence, like being surrounded by benevolent guardians who watch over our rest. The temperature of the chamber remains perfectly comfortable, maintained by the thermal mass of the thick stone walls that absorbed warmth during the day and now release it slowly throughout the night. This natural regulation means we need not think about adjusting blankets or changing position for warmth. We can simply rest in complete comfort, trusting that the ancient wisdom built into this sanctuary has anticipated our needs and provided for them without any effort on our part. Our mind begins to let go of the sustained intellectual effort that has characterized our contemplation thus far. The complex historical realities we have been exploring start to fade into the background, not because they are unimportant, but because we have extracted from them the essential understanding they had to offer. That understanding now settles into our consciousness at a deeper level, becoming part of our fundamental appreciation for life rather than something we need to actively think about. The contrast between medieval hardships and our present comfort creates a profound sense of gratitude that suffuses our entire being. This gratitude is not just an intellectual recognition but a felt sense of appreciation that relaxes us at the deepest level. When we truly understand how precious our safety and comfort are, we can rest in them more completely, without the background anxiety that often prevents deep relaxation. The ancient stones that surround us have witnessed countless transitions from contemplation to rest, from active thought to peaceful sleep. Their presence reminds us that we are part of a timeless human experience of seeking understanding and then resting in the peace that understanding brings. The very walls seem to encourage our transition towards sleep, holding space for us to let go of the day's concerns and sink into restorative rest. As our eyelids grow heavier and our breathing becomes deeper and more regular, we find ourselves naturally releasing any remaining tension or effort. The sanctuary continues to hold us safely as we begin the gentle transition from waking consciousness toward the healing realm of sleep. The wisdom we have gained remains with us, but it no longer requires our active attention. Instead, it becomes part of the peaceful foundation upon which our rest can be built. In these final moments of our contemplative journey, we find ourselves at the threshold between waking awareness and the sacred realm of sleep. The ancient sanctuary that has held us so tenderly throughout our exploration now prepares to be our guardian through the night, maintaining its protective embrace as we surrender to the deepest form of human rest and renewal. The very air seems to whisper ancient lullabies, carrying us gently toward the peaceful oblivion that restores both body and soul. The candles that have illuminated our contemplation have burned lower now, their flames smaller but somehow more concentrated, like distant stars offering gentle guidance through the approaching darkness of sleep. Their warm light no longer calls for attention but instead creates a soft golden glow that seems to emanate from within the very stones of the chamber, as if the walls themselves have absorbed centuries of candlelight and now release it as a gentle blessing upon those who seek rest within these sacred spaces. Our body has become completely relaxed, each muscle group having released its hold on the tensions and efforts of the day. Starting from the crown of our head, where all the thoughts and worries that once seemed so important have simply evaporated into the peaceful atmosphere, a wave of complete relaxation flows downward through our entire being. Our forehead smooths, our eyes grow soft behind closed lids, and our jaw releases any remaining tightness, allowing our face to settle into an expression of perfect peace. The understanding we have gained about the hardships of medieval life has transformed into something deeper than knowledge. It has become wisdom, and wisdom has become gratitude, and gratitude has become peace. We rest now in the complete security of knowing that we are safely removed from those ancient struggles, that centuries of human progress have created the sanctuary of comfort and safety in which we now rest. This knowledge settles into our bones like warmth, creating a foundation of security upon which perfect sleep can be built. Our shoulders, which may have carried the weight of modern concerns throughout the day, now sink deeper into the soft cushions beneath us, releasing completely into the supportive embrace of our resting place. The cushions seem to adjust themselves perfectly to our form, providing exactly the right amount of support for each part of our body. Our arms rest heavily but comfortably at our sides, our hands open and relaxed, no longer needing to grasp or hold on to anything in the external world. The rhythm of our breathing has slowed and deepened, matching the timeless rhythm of the sanctuary itself. Each breath carries us deeper into relaxation, each exhalation releasing us further from the concerns of the waking world. The air we breathe is clean and warm, filled with the accumulated peace of centuries of contemplation. It seems to carry within it the essence of all the prayers and meditations that have been offered in this space, blessing us with their accumulated tranquility. Our chest rises and falls with increasing gentleness, our heart beating steady and slow in the protected quiet of the chamber. The ancient stones that surround us seem to pulse in harmony with our heartbeat, as if the very building has come alive with a gentle, protective presence that watches over our transition into sleep. We are held safely within this rhythm, carried gently toward rest by forces much larger and more ancient than our individual consciousness. The weight of our torso settles more completely into the supporting cushions, our spine naturally aligning itself in perfect comfort. Each vertebra releases into its optimal position, no longer needing to work against gravity or tension. Our lower back, which may have carried stress throughout the day, now spreads wide and soft against the supportive surface beneath us, finally able to rest completely after the long effort of keeping us upright and mobile. Our hips and legs grow heavy with relaxation, sinking deeper into the comfortable surface that holds us. The large muscles of our thighs release completely, no longer needing to support our weight or prepare for movement. Our knees soften, our calves grow heavy and warm, and our feet, which have carried us through the day, now rest completely still, their work finished until tomorrow brings new opportunities for movement and exploration. The silence that surrounds us is not the absence of sound but the presence of perfect peace. It fills the chamber like a gentle substance, wrapping around us with protective softness. Occasionally, we might hear the distant sound of wind moving through the monastery gardens, or the soft settling of the ancient building as it adjusts to the cool of night, but these sounds only deepen our sense of being safely held within a living, breathing sanctuary that has protected countless souls through their transitions into sleep. Our mind, which has worked so diligently throughout our contemplation, now begins to release its hold on conscious thought. The complex ideas and historical realities we have explored fade gently into the background, not disappearing but settling into the deeper layers of understanding where they can be integrated and absorbed without requiring our active attention. Like books being gently closed and placed on shelves, our thoughts arrange themselves in peaceful order before growing quiet. The profound appreciation we have developed for our safety and comfort continues to suffuse our entire being, but it no longer requires conscious acknowledgement. It has become simply part of the atmosphere in which we rest, like the oxygen we breathe or the warmth that surrounds us. This appreciation creates a foundation of contentment so deep and stable that no worry or anxiety can disturb it. We rest in complete satisfaction with this moment, needing nothing more than what we already have. The ancient wisdom contained within these stone walls seems to flow into our consciousness like a gentle stream, carrying away any remaining fragments of tension or concern. Centuries of human seeking for peace and understanding have culminated in this moment of perfect rest, this transition into the healing realm of sleep that has sustained human life since the beginning of time. We are part of this ancient rhythm, this timeless cycle of activity and rest that connects us to every human being who has ever lived. Our breathing becomes so gentle and regular that it seems to merge with the breathing of the sanctuary itself, as if we have become part of the living rhythm of this sacred space. Each breath carries us deeper into the approaching realm of sleep, where the mind's constant activity gives way to the deeper wisdom of dreams and the restorative processes that heal and renew both body and spirit during the hours of darkness. The last vestiges of conscious thought begin to dissolve like morning mist touched by the warm rays of the sun. The historical figures we have contemplated, the medieval struggles we have examined, the insights we have gained, all settle into the depths of our understanding where they can continue their work of creating appreciation and wisdom without requiring our conscious participation. We have learned what we came to learn, and now we can rest in the peace that understanding brings. The candles continue their gentle flickering, but their light seems to come from increasingly far away, as if we are slowly sinking into a warm, dark sea where the surface world of light and activity becomes distant and unimportant. The golden glow that once illuminated our contemplation now serves only to mark the boundary between the waking world and the realm of dreams, guiding us safely across the threshold into the healing darkness of sleep. Our consciousness begins to fragment gently, like a stream dividing into smaller channels as it flows through a peaceful meadow. Thoughts become scattered and dreamlike, following their own mysterious logic rather than the organized patterns of waking awareness. The rigid boundaries of time and space begin to soften, allowing us to drift into the timeless realm where the soul restores itself through rest and dreams. The protective presence of the ancient sanctuary remains with us as we make this final transition, ensuring that our sleep will be safe, deep, and restorative. The accumulated peace of centuries continues to surround us like a gentle blanket, holding us safely as we surrender completely to the natural rhythm of rest that restores all living things. We sink now into the darkness that heals, carried gently into sleep by the wisdom of ages and the eternal human need for peace. In this final moment of conscious awareness, we rest in complete gratitude for the safety, comfort, and peace that surrounds us. The medieval hardships we have contemplated serve only to deepen our appreciation for the miraculous gift of this safe, warm, comfortable rest. We are held safely by forces larger than ourselves, by the ancient stones that have sheltered countless souls, by the accumulated wisdom of human civilization, and by the eternal rhythms of nature that have governed rest and renewal since the beginning of time. And now, surrounded by such perfect safety and comfort, blessed with such profound understanding and appreciation, we allow ourselves to be carried gently into the deep, restorative sleep that heals all wounds and prepares us for tomorrow's gifts. The sanctuary keeps its watch over us, the candles continue their gentle blessing, and we rest in the perfect peace that comes from understanding our place in the great human story of struggle, progress, and the eternal search for peace. The ancient stones whisper their lullabies, the accumulated wisdom of centuries blesses our rest, and we sink gratefully into the healing darkness of sleep, where dreams carry forward the insights of our contemplation and the renewal of sleep prepares us for tomorrow's opportunities to appreciate the miraculous gift of safe, comfortable, meaningful life in a world that has learned, slowly and at great cost, the precious value of peace.